here's another thing that most people don't understand. Some of the fast fashion brands you talk about that cost you a premium are all cheap cemented shoes.
Like Golden
90% of
Goose.
them are cheap cemented shoes. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. And you'd be surprised. Most often it's licensed. So there's a manufacturer who's just going to take that license and go out and produce, and they don't even care, right? That's one of the things that we want to do with our business. We want to be able to educate people.
Hi, and welcome to Indian Explorers. In this podcast, we talk about Indian success stories. I am Sabrina, and together with my co-host Amit, we will get to understand the journey of our guests and what drives them. The optimism, patience, idealism, and courage, these are their attributes which we hope to bring to life in our conversations with them. So if you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Amitu, today's guest has more passion than I've ever seen. And he pours it all into shoes, which was like, before we started this podcast, I was like, we're going to talk about shoes for an hour. I mean, I love shoes, but men's shoes. But he got me excited about men's shoes, and we learned how shoes are made. Just how he's revolutionizing the market with Rozario, his company. What did you think?
Good morning, Sabrina. I think I see shoes differently after this hour. I think before buying the next pair of shoes, I'm going to remember this episode. That's all I have to say.
Great. Let's bring him on because Joshua is passionate, intelligent, and like I said, revolutionizing the men's shoe industry. So let's bring him on.
Let's do it.
I am thrilled to introduce Joshua Rozario today. He is a strategic and creative brand marketing and sales professional and expert with over 18 years of experience. He is the founder of Mindshare Digital Inc., a Silicon Valley-based full services boutique marketing agency for tech startups and experts. The company has proudly served over 200 brands globally. He is now the founder of Rozario, a family-owned boutique trailblazing men's footwear. He specializes in custom shoes and custom hand-painted patina shoes created by some of the world's award-winning and leading patina artists. I want to hear lots more because I love shoes. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Sabrina, and nice to meet you again. And hey, nice to see you too, Amit.
Hey, you know what? It was the first time in a month that Sabrina gets the guest name completely like smooth. We've had a bunch of South Indians with long last names.
Please don't let me pull up some names, but I think the last episode was pretty interesting. The one with Soundarya.
Which is the last one you watched?
The Soundarya one.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
Soundarya Balasaramani.
Yeah, that was a tongue twister. Well, I'm excited to be here, guys.
Well, hopefully you are half as inspiring as Pooja or Soundarya was to us.
Man, she was. I watched her whole episode, and it was just too good. Too good.
She's phenomenal. Yeah.
And
so you're in Austin.
Yes, Sabrina. We're neighbors almost. I guess you're in San Antonio, right?
I am, yes. So, we come up there once in a while, so we'll have to meet up soon.
Definitely. And we're in South Austin, so that should make things easier.
Even better. The traffic, it's an hour drive, turns into about 2 hours. That's true. Traffic.
From south to north, yes.
Are you guys all living there because of lower taxes compared to New York and California?
And more space. More space.
It's cheaper.
Cheaper, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, your property taxes are comparatively higher the bigger space you own.
Property taxes, yeah.
But yes, no place like California, I will say.
Let's start at the beginning, Joshua.
Yes. Is it okay if I sip my coffee? Keeps me.
Of course.
Okay.
I have my drink too.
You guys are on the healthier side.
I mean, what is it? Is it wine? Is it?
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
I'm feeling actually pretty healthy today.
Okay, good.
So, Joshua, give us your background. You're in Austin? You're in Texas now. When did you move from India? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Give us the download.
Interesting. Okay. So we moved to the U.S. end of 2015, and we moved straight to California. And this is my wife and I. My
Okay.
wife and I, yes, and then in 2019 is our work brought us to California, and then in 2019 is when my wife and I we moved to Austin, Texas. And I tell my friends in Austin, Texas, don't hate me. We came before the COVID happened,
Yes. Yeah.
so in 2019 December is when we moved to Austin, Texas, and yeah, that's ever since we've been here. And but the company Mindshare Digital that was set up in California,
Okay.
and
And
then
is
when
it
we
that
moved to
company that took you to Austin as well?
so no, I set up the company after moving to Austin. It primarily was my wife. I've always worked from home because of my work. My wife's company transferred her from California to Austin.
Okay.
So like a good responsible, loving husband, I said, I will follow wherever you go, and rather eat whatever you give me to eat. So that's how we ended up moving to Austin. Yes,
Okay.
uh, I I don't know if you guys want to put this in, but I still miss California. It's an awesome place to live, and yeah. So that's how we moved to Austin, and we had our first daughter and our second child, both of them right here in Austin, and
Oh,
it's been
wonderful.
amazing ever since.
Congrats.
Yes,
Yeah.
Can we
yes.
I'm
can we
sure
go
you miss the
back?
weather. The
Can we
weather's
go
not
Oh,
great.
back?
Yeah.
okay.
Can we go back before California? Like when? What got you to California? And where were you before? Where were you? Where were
Okay,
you born?
got it. So I was born and raised in North India in Rajasthan, but I'm
Rajasthan. Okay.
originally a Madrasi.
Okay.
ऐसे कहते हैं ना शक्ल से दिखता है. I was
Okay.
born and raised in North India. My parents are from the south of India, and however, my dad used to serve in the Indian Air Force, and then he had his work that kind of moved him to the north of India in a place called Ajmer, a small town in Rajasthan. So I was born and raised there. I did all of my schooling there, and then I decided to pursue higher education. Went down to Chennai, which is in the south of India,
Sure.
then called Madras. And from there, that's when I met my wife, and my wife now, my girlfriend then. And then from there, we moved from Chennai to Bangalore, which is where my dad's from. And work primarily took me to Bangalore. And it was in 20, so it was then in 2015 that we moved. So I want to say we were in Bangalore for almost, I want to say about 10 years, almost 10 years in Bangalore before we moved to the US.
Doing what? What were
So,
you doing in Bangalore?
so I used to run an agency. So prior to running the agency here, I used to run, it was a very similar business. It was called Creatives at Work. It was a design agency. We did that. And then prior to that, I was in the space of learning and development, which is people development primarily. And we ran a company that did people development. So I transitioned from people development into marketing and creative design and things like that. My fascination growing up as a kid, and I think at some point of time, was why do people do what they do? And more from the idea of how do I change that? Because I was those are things that I wanted to change in my own self. So I was like, hey, how do I change this? And why do people do what they do? And that fascinated me to kind of go into the space of learning and development. So all of that goes into understanding human behavior and so on and so forth.
Psychology.
So, yes, and I got excited about it and I started this company. And we were primarily serving two markets. We were serving corporates and we were serving the business school industry primarily for employability skills. But then I also had to do sales because you're this one man show that has to sell, has to deliver, has to clean the office, and so on and so forth. So I had to sell. And that led to the fascination of why do people buy what they buy? So why do people do what they do to why do people buy what they buy? And then this whole idea of consumer behavior and user experience and so on and so forth. So
Yep.
ever since the fascination has been, why do people do what they do? Why do people buy what they buy? And how do you alter human behavior? How do you influence people? Again, not from the point of view, as someone says, to misuse, but to try and understand, hey, we all want to change human behavior, sometimes even for our own self, but we're not able to do it. You take the help of somebody else. And through that journey, I've had some fascinating mentors and coaches work with me. And that's where you kind of really understand and realize the power of how coaching and mentoring can really change your life. Now, this is on the rosy side that you're hearing. Growing up, I was a spoiled brat. I don't know if my parents are proud of me. So uh, I like to call my siblings would still call me the black sheep growing up, And I had my own set of struggles and identity, and culturally you were in a different place, right? I mean, I was my when I was born and raised in the north of India, which culturally was very different than south of India, because my parents were still South Indians. They spoke the language, they ate the food. And talking about racism, people talk about racism happening in the Western world. I experienced it a lot more in
Yeah,
India, in this small town growing up, right?
sure.
And this idea of being a South Indian in a North Indian city
Wow.
was
Okay.
very challenging, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the term Madrasi. So everybody would
Mhm.
call you a Madrasi because you were a
Yeah.
South Indian, or you looked different, or spoke the language a little differently, and so on and
Was
so
it
forth. So
darker complexion?
yes, darker complexion was one part of it, was a huge part of it, and
Yeah.
and also because Hindi was not something which is what the primary language were, would not come to me that easily. Now, of course, I can speak Hindi very fluently, but it was not my go-to language. We would either speak English at home, or we would understand my parents' vernacular language, though. So this is very fascinating, at least for me. And I think I was a very curious kid growing up. So it was quite of I would say, quite a bit of a struggle for me as a young teen. And then it was when I landed in Chennai to pursue higher education, is where I was so fortunate. I landed up in this great college called the Madras Christian College, set up by British missionaries, Scottish missionaries back in 1800. And I had the opportunity of meeting some very fascinating folks who really invested into my life. And I think that journey in that college helped me really see a very different self.
Yeah.
And that kind
Jo-
of led me to say, hey, I want to do this as a career.
yeah. I
Okay.
guess your parents, Indian Army,
Indian Air
your
Force.
father,
Yeah, my
Indian Air
dad
Indian
served
Force,
in the
Air
Indian Air Force. Yeah.
your mother, housewife.
He was a
Yeah,
homemaker. Yes.
homemaker. Yeah. So I guess they wanted you to be a doctor or a I don't know,
Um,
an engineer,
well,
and
I think early on, my parents just set their expectations right. And they said, dude, if we can
black
get
sheep.
him to just finish school, we're happy.
Force.
So yeah,
We've done our
I
job.
think I think for some reason, I know my parents were very particular about academics, but they were not necessarily particular about the doctor or engineer part of it. I
Okay.
think that freedom they definitely gave us. Uh, so I think, no, we did not come from families that were extremely particular about doctor or engineer, but they definitely were particular that, hey, you know, um, getting a good career, a good lifestyle, uh, practicing good ethics and lifestyle, those are more important aspects than
And
just pursuing a doctorate career. And because I think a lot of that also ties to your identity,
your
right?
family of
Oh,
three, four.
definitely.
Yes.
How
We're
many
four
kids?
siblings. So
You have
I have an
four.
elder sister. She's in Chicago. I'm the second one. Then I have a younger sister, and the youngest is a brother.
Okay.
Wow,
And
two
I
boys,
guess
two
my youngest
girls.
brother took all the pressure because he was the engineer in the family. So I blame it
So
on
your
him.
parents are proud of or at least him.
Yes, at least there's one guy who's made it.
Right.
I was reading it was your dad with his military background that
Yes.
instilled the
Oh
value
yes. Oh
of
yes.
well-polished shoes.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
where this passion for shoes started?
Yes. Huge, huge, Sabrina.
Okay.
Um, so uh, we had to wear uniform while going to school in India. It was standard, right? Unlike what we see here. And my dad was among the few best dressed men during his Indian Armed Forces days. He was so good at and he came from a family of armed forces. So his uncles, his dad, his brothers, all of them were in the armed forces, right? So there was a little bit of that unsaid uh, pressure to say, "Hey, you should be joining the armed forces." My mom wasn't for it at all. That's different. But my dad definitely, because of from a dad's side. So my dad noticed that very often. I remember this very well. That most kids would show up at school with their shoes not polished. Forget about polished, not even brushed. And then, of course, the teachers at the school wouldn't allow us to go into the assembly. We would get penalized for some of that. And I bet he's seen that once, and he swore that he's never going to have his kids show up there. So he was not only particular about it being brushed, like oh, you just dust off, just brush off
Mhm.
the dust on it. No, he was particular that you polish it. And he tried it a couple of times that it didn't work. And he came back to me and he said, son, listen, you can tell a great deal about a man by the shoe he wears. So I don't know, for some reason that worked with me. The other techniques didn't work. So he would ensure that we polish. And I'm telling you, if there were times that I'm in a rush and I'm like, I'm just going to brush this shoe and I will, walk past him and he won't even notice. Right. And he would ask me, did you polish? And I'm like, yeah, I polished. He said, listen, Tera Bapu, I'm your father. I know what it is. That's not polish. That's brush. So go back and polish your shoes.
Wow.
And then, so he was very particular about that. So I think somewhere this idea that shoes are so important and a good polished shoe is so much more important. And more importantly, it's an indicator of who you are inside, right? It's this whole idea of, hey, it's the smaller things that most people ignore, right? It's about being able to say, I want to be able to take the extra effort, go the extra mile, to be able to look decent and professional and earn the respect of people around you, especially if you're in a culture that does not necessarily give you what you necessarily think is you're deemed to have. So things like that, right? So I think that's where it kind of got me excited. And I saw that over a period of time, when I looked at all the shoes that were being sold in the market, none of them interested me.
Not a pair of Crocs.
Friends. Well, I don't know if you. Oh no, I don't think. For some reason, I was never into Crocs or sneakers or any of that. I mean, the most I have is what they call dress sneakers. I was going to ask you
if you like Jordans, because you have over 500 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, none of them. I've never been drawn to the kids and the boys kind of shoes. You know what the real men stuff is what we were into. So yeah, so I think for some reason that was more fascinating. And keep in mind, my dad served in the armed forces, so for them it was always the leather, the dress shoes, right?
Right.
And then I remember at some point of time I also went down to participate in what they call in India the Republic Day parade, which happens in Delhi, right? And you walk past the president and all of that. So it's a gruesome 1 month training. And I remember my dad, this was right after school. I remember my dad coming down to Delhi and having all my shoes polished. There's something called a mirror shine, which is you could literally see your face. You polish it to that extent, right? So he did all of that for me, and turned out to be one of the best dressed cadets at that particular event. So yeah, ever since there's been this small details that have kind of had an influence. And massively. So J. Rozario, interestingly, is also it sounds narcissistic, but it's not primarily me. It's my dad's name is Joseph Rozario, so that's got a J there. So it's an honor in his name that it says J. Rozario. It's not necessarily just my name there. Yeah.
I can tell you, your father would not think very highly of me. Honestly, if the shoes I wear, like the shirts I wear, they're not ironed. Like I didn't know how to wear a tie in school. Like the first day of school, everybody went to chapel with a tie, and I was there with a knot, which is so embarrassing. Like as if when you're drunken and you just remove your tie. I'm quite untidy.
I'll tell you, things have improved. I know you. After working so hard on the second child, he gave up on the third and fourth one. So I think it was a lot of work.
I hear what your dad says about this self-respect. Everyone in the army, when they get up, they make their bed in an impeccable manner. The way you start the day is the way you end your day. It's like that. It's like that Keanu Reeves in John Wick 4. That my favorite line of the movie. I think I've said it before. The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Everything. You're
right. So it just needs to be done. Right.
I agree.
It's that discipline, that self-respect needs to be done. However, this brings me back to a small story of mine. I remember when I used to go interview for Credit Suisse for investment banking when I was 2021, I got about 40 rejections back to back. And I used to look good. I used to shave, look good, everything. And then one day I woke up half an hour late. I went to an interview with a some beard. I didn't wear a tie. I wasn't well dressed. I was rough look. And the guy in the interview goes, in 50 years of this esteemed bank, it was like Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse, nobody has showed up late for an interview.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has shown up like looking like you, unpresentable.
Mm-hmm.
Your shirt's not even tucked in. Like, I'm interested to hear your story. You have guts to show up to this interview late. And a week later, I got a job offer from Credit Suisse because I was like, I didn't care, and I looked like I didn't care. So it was like, you know what? Sometimes life just is just unexpected.
What was your reason to show up that way? Who does that for an interview?
I overslept. I didn't hear the alarm. Yeah. And honestly, Sabrina, I went to the bus and I was so nervous because I was late. I left my wallet behind. So I had to beg a stranger for £1. It was a quid. So by the time I got there, it was a 9 o'clock interview. I showed up at 9:25. I was like, this is investment banking. Do I have the guts to come in and say, hey, Amit Nawalrai, I'm late? And the woman at the reception looked at me and she goes, you had a 9 o'clock interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I know, but, I had a family emergency. And she was not sure whether she should let me in or not, but I got that job offer.
Here's what I realized. You can take a man out of the armed forces, but you cannot take the armed forces out of the man. It is hard. It's ingrained in them. So, yeah, I think he's gotten a little better now, just a tad bit better, but man, he's still
with age.
He's
how old is he?
Same with he's about 74 now. I want to say 74 or 75. But,
so a good 20 years still.
Yeah. Oh, with his discipline, probably he'll last much longer than that.
No, but with the Indian diet, I don't think he'll last. I mean, let's hope so. But we're not like Japs that last over 100, right?
I know. Yeah,
things
but
have changed. Things have changed. Yeah. I want to know. This is the fashion industry is so competitive. What made you decide to take that leap of faith to say, you know what, this is my passion. I'm ready to do it.
Oh, okay. I think one, I want to say, Sabrina, it's just been the fact that I don't say this with pride, but I say that the fact that I own 500 pairs tells you that I had to be so crazy about something like this, right? Because it takes a lot of time, money, energy to do something like that. And so that's primarily what really drove me. In fact, I jokingly say, I said I make shoe contact before I make eye contact, because I really could tell a whole lot about a person to a very large extent by the shoes they wear. I can. I can tell you the quality of the shoe. I can tell you the price of the shoe. I can tell you, what's important for them, what's not important for them. I can tell you the mode of transport, so much just by looking at a pair of shoe, right? I can tell you to some extent what profession they could also be in. So I think it somewhere was so fascinating for me. And I know, well, thank God we're just doing these interviews with about our best
good without meeting in person.
So no, I'm not judging people. I'm just saying that I could tell, right? We all can tell.
Yeah.
There are just different ways. Some use facial expressions to do it, and maybe I just use shoes, right?
I'm judging you right now by the quality of your camera.
Well, so I think for me, the shoe part was really, really fascinating, right? And I don't know if you noticed, Sabina, are traditionally the kind of shoes, or traditionally you see most shoes are black and browns. And I realized there's this space for shoes that allow us to express our unique style and personality. That's what we're big on. So if you look at some of our shoes, they're not the traditional black and browns. We have a small collection of them, but mostly if you see our shoes, they're those wild colors. If you don't mind, I'm going to...
Yes,
sure, the Leo, the Austins, the bluish.
The Leo's nice, yeah.
Right? Now, this is not what you traditionally get. So we wanted to kind of, do something like this, because I know I had quite a few of my friends who would want to have something that's different and unique and, a place that they can express their style and personality, but they're stuck with going back to buying those black and brown ones. So I kind of saw an opportunity there. Now, but the ones that I showed you, those are more hand painted, right? So that's a little different. But then we also realized, hey, we can have a blue shoe, we can have a burgundy shoe, we can have, red, white, and blue. So that's how we said, okay, I want to kind of own that space and kind of go from there.
And every shoe ordered is hand painted by a patina artist. Is that correct?
It takes 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
This is how the shoes are made. This is the unfinished crust. This is how our shoes are made. And then patina artist works on it, and and that's the magic that happens.
Wow, very cool.
So yes, so this is the before, and this is the after of what kind of comes out.
And where is this person sitting and painting these shoes? Are they in
So
Florence
we do them
or are they in a
in
village in China?
No, they happen in two places. So one is a factory in Spain, and then they happen in New York, and here in the US, New York and Arizona. So the ones that happen at the factory in Spain are still artisans because I've seen them do their job. It's just fascinating. But the guys who are we collaborate with both in New York and in Tucson, both of them are award-winning artists, award-winning patina. So they have this competition that happens every year in London, and now it's also happening in New York, where you have patina artists come in from all over the world to participate and do some of this hand patinas.
That is so cool. Where in Spain where are the artists in Spain?
So it's a place called Almanza, which is considered the mecca of shoes. You know, quality shoes in Europe are primarily made in Spain, and more in this place called Almanza. Yeah.
And this is why we do the podcast, because we learn something new every day. So now we know what the Oscars of shoemaking is.
Yes.
So
yes. I mean,
why is the Leo 10 to 12 days? And then the Asher, Auburn's, Austin's, Fuego, and the other ones, all 4 to 6 weeks. What's the difference?
Interesting. You've gone and looked into some of the products. So the Leo is what we call a swift lane. So in a swift lane, what happens is the materials are pre-cut and kept. And when an order comes in, there's only so much you can customize. In other words, I think I have a Leo right here. That means in our Leo, what you can customize is you can customize the sole. You can say, hey, I want to have a different sole. You can do that. But if you say, I want to have different pieces of leather right on this particular one, you can do that in our Swift Lane program. That's only available in our 4 to 6 weeks because that's a whole lot of work. Patina is because it's a different beast in itself. You first got to make this particular shoe down to the details, including if you want to have a different sole, or if you want to have a different combination of things, and then you have a patina artist sit and work on it. So that's an additional step that goes into it. So that's where one takes 10 to 12 days and the other one takes about 4 to 6 weeks.
Your wife has been fully supportive of,
thankfully, yes,
this endeavor, correct?
Yes.
And so is she a shoe does she have a passion for shoes?
Co-founder.
She is. When you say co-founder, she's come alongside and helped take our money out of our savings to invest into this business. But she has not been, thankfully, because as I say, you can't have two lions in the same jungle, right? So it's a good idea to just allow one of us to do that. So I have a fairly large setup for my shoes here, which she's been very kind enough in accommodating. There are some rules, of course, that the shoes should never show up in the master bedroom. There's a loft and game room. You can keep all of them there. So that way, she's very accommodating. She doesn't want to see them thrown around. So it's fine in my office. But yes, she's been otherwise very accommodating that way.
She's probably the lion. You're Simba.
Well, I'm sure you don't want to edit this part, right?
No. Why would I edit it? Not at all. Listen, why a golden goose and some shoes $600? Why is yours $375? I mean, walk me through the pricing of shoes, because even Nikes are $150, and you add the Jordan logo and you add another zero at the end. Like, walk me through the demand supply of your business.
So here's a question. So generally, in your understanding, just so that I understand this, so
sure,
you're saying 375, 400 are on the higher side as compared to when you look at some of the Nikes at $100. Is that what you meant?
Thought for dress shoes,
you're talking about
it would be an average price for men's dress shoes. That's what I'm guessing.
Got it.
I have worn a $375 pair of shoes once in my life. It was, I even know the date. It was on October 27th, 2012.
Wow. Your
right?
wedding.
The day I got married, I bought a nice pair of Hugo Boss, is it Boss or Hugo Boss? Whatever, Boss shoes. And those were like $400. And now I saw them like a year ago in my cupboard, and like they've started to like crease. And I'm not one that puts those things inside the shoe and maintain them. And like, I don't have the cream or to clean the shoes. So now I don't even want to wear them because they're stiff and hard and old.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally spent $400 for a pair of shoes that I wore once in my life. And that hurts me. But anyway, back to the question. Walk me through the pricing structure.
So
please.
Most people traditionally, if you're not into shoes, would not realize is that typically 4 broad categories of shoes. The one that sits at the bottom of the pyramid, which is what you see most people wear, is what we call a cemented shoe. And a cemented shoe is a shoe where the sole is just stuck to the upper. In other words, this particular sole is just stuck to the upper. This, in my understanding, is a cemented shoe is a use and throw shoe. Because you can't resole them. You can, but is it worth resoling that? And here's why. The uppers on them are poor quality, are crappy quality. So they're designed for use and throw, typically, right? So that's the difference between, hey, do I want to own a Kia or do I want German engineering? So on. Now, the next level is what we call as Blake stitch shoes. A Blake stitch shoe is still where the sole is stitched to the upper. That means you can resole them. So all you do is you take off the stitching, put a new sole back, and then you stitch the sole back. They are much better quality than a cemented shoe because they know the soles, the uppers are going to last for a long, long time. The next level you go up are what they call as Goodyear welted shoes, which is what our construction is, which is what's also considered the gold standard. It's about 100-year-old practice. And what that does is it uses a piece of leather we call it a welt, and it's used as something that serves like a bridge between a sole and the upper. And then you stick the welt in the middle. So what happens is, so here's the upper, and here's the sole, and here's the welt. The reason you use the welt is that when you take the sole off to put back a new sole, you're not necessarily touching the uppers.
Okay.
Which means you can resole them so many times.
Sure.
I have some shoes. I'm into vintage shoes. I have shoes that are 70 years old. I have one that's 104 years old. How do they last that long? The leather is great. So that's where you invest into the high quality stuff, right? So your uppers need to be really great. Yes. So your uppers need to be really great. So I think that's key in terms of the difference in price, right? So you're not just buying, just like saying, hey, if my tires wear out, do I just throw the car? No, you don't. You just go out and change the tires. So that's primarily what we're doing with our shoes, right? So our shoes are designed for to be resold. But here's another thing that most people don't understand. Some of the fast fashion brands you talk about that cost you a premium are all cheap cemented shoes.
Like 90%
of them are cheap cemented shoes.
Really?
Yes. And you'd be surprised.
And I was going to ask you that.
Yes,
they are cheap. And that's label, shoes. That's marketing of a brand.
That's what does. Look dirty.
That's what does. It's
marketing.
And it's most often it's licensed. So there's a manufacturer who's just going to take that license and go out and produce, and they don't even care, right? And that's where most people look at it, say, and also because that's one of the things that we want to do with our business. We want to be able to educate people. This is a dying industry, I should tell you. The dress shoes in general is a dying industry, right?
Because of craftsmanship.
That's true, right? It takes 122 steps to make this, no exaggeration, right? So I think our goal is also to be able to educate. Here's another thing. This is a research that I came across a few years ago. It's fascinating. It's part of our branding and marketing too. 300 million pairs of shoes land up in landfills every year because you can't resole them. And it's not worth resoling. Let me put it the other way. You can't resole them, and it's not worth resoling them. You can, but the cobbler is like, dude, that's like, I'm going to be charging you the price of what you probably paid for it. And it's not going to last a whole lot long because it's just crappy quality. So that's a big challenge out there. Now, our prices, and you can look that in terms of comparing with a lot of other brands that tend to do something similar, are at least 30 to 40% lesser, if not 50% lesser than other competing brands that do this in the US. Of course, keep in mind, labor is a huge part. Cost of labor in the United States is higher. Spain is comparatively lesser. And then we have one particular collection that we assemble in India, and I'm consciously using the word assemble because there's this perception that, hey, made in India doesn't have to be that great, and that's not true. It depends on who you're working with in India. I think that's very, very key. For example, our manufacturer who makes a certain collection for us, they are the ones who make for some of the biggest brands that once we're leading brands in the United States. Real high quality. In fact, our shoes are made on the same machines that make for some of the real big brands in the United States. So, but what they do is they're so big in their manufacturing capacity, they have the strength to be able to work with some of the best tanneries across the world and import material, which small players can't, right? So that's the advantage we get to work with. And I was fortunate to be, as a small brand, be able to work with this big manufacturer more because he happened to be a friend of mine. So, so they basically import all of their stuff from across the world, mostly from Europe and South America, and then they have them assembled in India. And it's a fascinating story if you want me to tell you about how these guys do it in India. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of cultural here. Now, this happens in a small town called Ambur in the south of India. And traditionally, this is a daily wage worker business. So a guy comes in every day, works at the factory, gets paid at the end of the day, and goes back home. Now, in India, if you understand culturally, men are the one who work, and men are also given into liquor. And here's the problem that happens: they get paid at the end of the day, they go to the nearest liquor store, get drunk, and whatever is left is brought home. And the wife has to use that to run the family. So this manufacturing partner, I believe they're fourth generation shoemaker. Fascinating the way someone could think about this, right? At least 4 generations ago. So they said, we're not going to hire men primarily. We're going to primarily hire women. So 80 to 90% of their workers are women now. Because culturally in India, women don't drink.
Right.
At least not the ones, that come from a certain household. So
Not
now,
anymore.
yeah, but, from a certain household, right? So here you have women come in and they work and they run the family, right? They have kids to take care of. But here's another problem. If the women come and work at a factory, who's going to take care of the kids? So they set up a school as an extension of the factory and a daycare center. So the kids come in, they're there at the school, they're at the daycare center, they're fed a meal. The mothers get to have their meal with their kids and then come back again, work at the factory, and then they also provide transport. So then they drop them back, and it's a much better way. And bottom line, from a strategic point of view, attrition is so low because these folks don't jump jobs just because somebody's paying them $10 more, or they're not, hey, I'm drunk and I can't come to work today. Those issues are rarely there, right? So this has been fascinating how, and of course, a lot of other factories have started implementing that. But it's very fascinating how they kind of do that, and it's been a huge
very
game changer for them.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
I have a question for both of you, as I like to put Sabrina on the spot. It's part of what I do in this pod, and the reason why I do it. I want to know how many pairs of shoes Sabrina has. You mentioned 500 pairs yourself. I want to know how many pairs of shoes Sabrina has, and I want to know how many pairs of shoes people have on average, the men, and whether that changes, say, in India versus America.
Huge.
Yeah. So okay, Sabrina, why don't you start first?
I'm thinking right now is thinking 30.
Sabrina, that's way, way below what a woman your age has. That's
really?
Like you're below average. 30 for a woman your age. I mean, for a young woman your age, I meant. Joshua?
Yeah, that was
30, 35.
Yeah. 30, 35 for
dress shoes.
For a successful woman like Sabrina with her beautiful looks.
Modest. She's being very modest.
You're saying she has 100 and she only wants to say 35?
I have trouble spending on like big brand shoes, but I have no problem when my husband goes and does it and I tell him, oh, I love these shoes. And he goes and pays for it and then brings them to me.
For you or for himself?
No, for me and for himself. That's fine too. But I can't go to the store and spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes.
That's the Cindy. That's the Cindy in you.
But I'm okay with him bringing them home, right? And so, well, to answer your question, I'm guessing like 30 to 35, and that's like I wear this like I have a few tennis shoes, I have a few like sandals I wear all the time. I wear my few heels, like.
Sabrina, you are what, 40, 46? How old are you?
47.
47. I think for a 47-year-old woman, I think the average is over 50, easily.
What do you say, Joshua?
For a woman?
Well, I would say yes, because I can tell you have a good sense of style, which means you're not dependent on 2 or 3 pairs. You kind of, and my guess also is that you have a lot of events to go out to, and you like to dress up for different events. So yeah, we can talk, Sabrina. I can take you shopping. Well, you pay, but I can take you shopping.
Sabrina, he's assuming the style bit because I'm your first cousin. That's the only reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when he told me about his shoe story, I really wondered if you guys were cousins.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. My first pair of no, I'm lying.
Nice shoes.
There's one pair of designer shoes. One of the first ones was a pair of Louboutins. And I was like, you know what? I want them. They are the most uncomfortable shoes.
Yes.
And I feel like we just threw away. And
what do they cost? What do they cost?
They're
$1,000?
about $1,000.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could do a whole episode on women's shoes. We could do a whole episode on women's shoes.
I know.
But let's, Joshua.
If I can slide this in, we're going to be doing women's shoes very soon.
I was just going to ask you that.
I thought I would never do. I thought I'd never do until that daughter came along. And I was like, man.
He sees the money. He sees the money.
Yes.
Okay, so can you answer the question about Indian versus American shoes?
Most Indian men, just one pair of shoe, black, standard. One black dress shoe for everything. That's what they wear, right? I'll tell you this. How do you identify if a parent is just visiting their kids in the US? This is funny. So when we lived in California, we could go to the beach because it was pretty close. Every time you go to a beach, you see Indian parents wearing dress shoes at the beach. You know that they're just visiting.
Not chappal?
Romania. Not chappals, dress shoes. There's dress shoes everywhere, right? Dress shoes to the playground, dress shoes to everything, right? Just
back there, pair. Not today.
No, even today, I could tell you. I could look and say, "Oh, your parents are visiting."
I bet I'll notice it now.
Well, the kids nowadays take their parents to Skechers and buy them Skechers.
Oh, my dad had Skechers. Yeah,
that's true.
They all do. My mom, my dad, all have Skechers. And only when we force them, now they have a pair of Under Armours or Nikes for walking, because they walk so much. But up to date, they all used to wear what he said.
Such a cultural thing.
When I was in school, they would come visit me in a black shoes.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
Very, very dressy. Yes, very dressy. At the most, two pairs, a black and a brown, because that's like, hey, you got to have a black, then you got to have a brown, right? So that's traditionally what. Growing up, I did not see that like that at all. With my dad, especially, he had, I want to say, about 8 to 10 pairs, and I could see that. Right, growing up, you see that he takes care of them, he polishes them, and he's like this well dressed, well kept in that way. So I think it was there. I had a fairly decent collection back in India too, and we moved them. Then I think for me, I don't recommend people doing this. It's not worth spending that kind of time and money and energy doing the number of pairs. But I think I pushed it too far. But my justification is, having bought and owned 500 pairs, you now have seen pretty much every pair under the sun. So I can tell you what it is. So the good, bad, and the ugly. So
can you share, since you have 500 pairs of shoes, you mentioned, not in this podcast, but in some earlier podcasts that I was going through and researching about today, that even though you work from home, you're still wearing your shoes because you want to test the quality. Yes. And you got the concept from the Padman story. Can you tell us a little bit about the Padman story in India? Because I thought it was quite funny.
Okay. Yeah. So the Padman story is this guy who wanted to create sanitary napkins for women, and is like, hey, I want to go through the whole process of understanding. One is, of course, accessibility. He wanted to make it accessible to remote parts of India, but even what it is for a woman to go through that process. Now, of course, as a man, he would understand all of it. He would wet the pads and wear them himself throughout the day, just to be able to see what it felt, or what kind of inconvenience the women went through wearing those pads, right? Sanitary pads. And I think that was fascinating. There was a Bollywood movie around that, and that was fascinating for me.
Oh, yes. My mom told me about that.
Yes.
So do you wet your shoes? Or?
So, I don't wet my shoe, thankfully. But what I do is, because I work from home, mine is a home office, I don't get enough opportunities to wear them outside. And I want to be able to wear them and what it feels like, right? So every time a sample comes from the factory, I wear them throughout my day in the office, standing, sitting, stepping out, or whatever that looks like, 8-10 hours a day. And then I go through the process of saying, okay, if I approve of that, then in my understanding, most people do, because, hey, 8 to 10 hours, most average folks, folks don't do 8 to 10 hours, but even if they did, I kind of gone through the process of what that might look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, after
can
you,
I ask, what's your ultimate goal for J Rozario? Where do you want to see this company go?
So one is I the whole idea of never say never, but I'm at the same time not necessarily looking at this to be a company that's going to be invested into. I want to create this to a place that can stay well within the family and lifestyle, more from a lifestyle point of view, from a lifestyle business. So that's the goal. Uh, but at the same time, we would always want to try and keep this as a direct to consumer brand, and not necessarily. Uh, and also want to create a sense of exclusivity with the brand, right? So you want to make it exclusive. You still want to make it accessible from a price point of view, but you still want to make it something that's exclusive for folks to have.
And that's
So
what makes
that's
it
the
different
goal.
from going to a department store, a
Yes,
gentleman going to a department store and picking up a pair of shoes. This is
yes,
exclusive. It's
yes,
tailored to what you want.
yes.
So you don't want our friend Bernard Arnault from Louis Vuitton to buy you at some point, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I
Never
don't
say
think so.
never.
I don't think so. But yes, also I think there were some big no's we said early on. For example, we said never in our life are we going to ever do cemented shoes. At no cost will we ever do cemented shoes. One, because it's just an indicator of poor quality, and also from a sustainability point of view, it's not just a good idea. So those are non-negotiables. We said
Okay.
But
we will never
did
compromise.
you say you'll never do women's shoes at the
So I
beginning?
started off, I never said we will never do. We said we will primarily be a men's shoe brand, right? Because I understood that space only. And then I
Yeah,
kind
that's the
of, over a period
passion.
of time, I realized that I started getting a lot of compliments from women too. And like, that's an interesting shoe. I've never seen something like this. Oh, this is so different. And I would ask them, hey, have you considered having a shoe that I'd love to have a shoe like that? And I said,
Yeah,
why not?
isn't now no difference in what men are wearing and women are wearing? Like when I go now to a many shops, even like when I buy glasses, lots of fashion accessories. I go in and I go, "Hi, where's the men's section?" And there's a
Mhm.
gay guy at the counter going, "Oh, everything is for you. Everything's for like it doesn't matter the sex." Well, what am
So
I doing wrong, Sabrina?
I
That's how they
think,
say everything is for everybody. So I'm not saying there's an LGBT corner, but like everything is universal nowadays, right? Like this
uh,
polo, a guy could wear it, a girl could wear it. These glasses. So Sabrina's still looking at me badly, but tell me.
so my
It was the
understanding is that,
mannerism.
Yeah.
yeah. My understanding is that traditionally men only had black and brown shoes, while women had a lot more options to play with, right?
But you're
You
doing
could
blue
find women
shoes.
wearing white shoes, blue shoes, red shoes, and all of that. That was considered inappropriate, or I don't know, culturally not acceptable for men. And I think we slowly transitioned into trying out different colors. Uh, and I think that's changed over the years. I still know that a lot of men are not necessarily attracted to our style, but I also know a lot of men do, right? I can look at a man at the airport and say, hey, that's the profile of our customer. And most often I've been right. Uh,
If Pharrell Williams, wore your shoes and they were
okay.
red or burgundy, tomorrow there'd be a million other people wanting those shoes. So
Yeah.
that's my point. I see no difference today between men and women, and shoe
It is
size,
changing.
men and women shoe size is the same as well, right?
No, it's different.
Adults.
It's different.
Oh, women's size is different to
Yeah.
men's size
Yes.
when you buy a
Yes. Yes.
shoe.
Yes.
Oh, it's not 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10.
No. No. And even in
It is,
that, you
but
have
then
different, right?
the sizes are different, right?
Yeah.
I never
Yes.
bought women's shoes. You can tell, but that's why I'm
US
asking.
US US size is different than UK size, or Europe size is still different. So even for women, it's going to be
Yeah.
different. But yes, I am
That's
comfortable
because the
wearing red
Americans.
shoes. I'm
Yeah,
comfortable wearing pink shoes, and sometimes my wife will be like, "You really want to wear those?" I'm like,
Hey,
"Doesn't
I
make
think
a
that's
difference. That's my
awesome. That's
personality."
confidence.
I couldn't carry red or pink shoes. I don't
Uh,
think. Yeah. Yeah.
Is
yeah,
there a role of technology that will evolve this industry?
Sabrina loves the
it.
AI question.
I love it. I think one, we are to some extent ahead of the game using technology, and maybe I can send you guys a clip of what I mean. We're now very soon, in about 20 days, about to launch what we would call a 3D shoe configurator. And what that looks like is that you can take a pair of shoe and customize every bit of that shoe.
Myself online on a website.
online. So you can see that this is a different material, this is a different material. And I could have a different material for this, I could have a different material for this, or a different color, and I can have a different color here, and I can have a different sole in here for shoes. So customize every bit of the shoe, and you can see what that looks like, right? So
Can I
that's what
initialize it? Can I put my AN? Can I put
oh
my two
yes,
sons' names?
yes, you could do that. So in some of our shoes, we do have the option of being able to. I don't know if you really can see this here, but you can have your initials engraved right here.
Oh,
But we
Got
are
it.
also kind
Yeah.
of coming up with the option that you could do it right here and things like that. So that's a huge part that now there are one or two other brands that are doing it, no doubt, but among hundreds of brands, there are just two of them that are doing it. We'd probably be among the third brand that does this here in the United States.
Just add
So
$50 a letter. Add to the price.
no, just to kid me. No, I'm kidding. So no, but it's good, right? You get to personalize. You invested so much time and money into creating that something that's so unique and personal. You want to be able to keep that.
I
So
love the
yeah,
idea. If you have you said 70 plus and 104 years old, a pair of shoes. If I could
yes,
put my kids' names and then give it to my kid and then he gives it to his
yes,
kid, I think that's like what they do now with the Pateks and the Rolexes, like pass it on to every
yes,
generation. If you're able
yes.
to do a shoe that lasts so long and take care of them,
It
why
will.
not pass it on to the other generation?
Yes, I have a pair of
Josh,
shoes for my dad that I still
yeah,
have. Right? Yeah.
I'm sure. Joshua, success. What does success mean to you?
That's an interesting one. So early on, as someone who was trying to really grasp and understand success, it was always in comparison with others. And then I said I was fortunate to have some mentors invest into my life. And one of the fundamental things that shifted for me was, what were you born with? What did you have? And where you are. So it's not in comparison with others, but it's rather in comparison with who you were and where you are and how that journey has been. So for me, that's the success, right? I don't know if I've shared this, but I started off growing up, I just had one pair of shoe. That's what I had to wear to school. That's what I had to wear to a playground. That's what I had to wear everywhere because that's all we could have. And it was embarrassing in many ways, and that also kind of fed that desire to have shoes and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to go out and get 500 pairs, but that kind of led the journey. But also more importantly for me, when I remember when I had the first nice quality pair of shoe, man, it changed the way I walked. I couldn't sleep the whole night. I'm telling you, there's this
that is
uncle of
so
mine who took me
cool.
one evening to this shop, and he says, I remember him telling this word very clearly. He told that shopkeeper, and I'll say this in Hindi and then we can translate that in English. And he says, Isko sabse badhiya wala juta dilao, which means give him the best shoes. And the guy takes out this pair of shoe. And I'm telling you, it was evening. I want to say it was about 8:39 p.m. around. And then I couldn't sleep the whole night because I
Oh,
got to wear those shoes to school the next morning, right?
That's
And
awesome.
I know what that feels like when you wear this nice quality pair of shoe and you walk. It changes your stride. It changes the way you walk, right? So a huge part of what we do at J. Rosario, and it's been very transformational for me personally, is that every time you buy a pair of shoes, we give away a pair of shoes to a child who I know is going to change their life. It's
A,
huge.
a
And
cemented pair of shoes to them.
so the reason works cemented for them is, keep in mind that they're outgrowing those shoes real fast. So
yeah,
we're
that's true.
wanting to keep them. So kids come back to us and say, like the nonprofit we work with, they're like, hey, listen, this kid needs a new pair. All right, 1 year later, we're like, sure, because that's our goal. But our goal is quality, functional shoes, because of course, and we've cracked an interesting business model around that. Maybe details for another day, but
No, no.
we've been
So
able
we want to
to.
know. So you tie up with Bata in India, or how do you give them the
No,
shoes?
no, no. So, okay. So, one is the inspiration comes from Tom's shoes, right?
Okay.
And also, my journey kind of feeds into it as like, hey, I know how one pair of shoe transformed my life, right? That night, I just. So, a lot of these shoe manufacturers or factories, they have a quality standard to meet by their QC department. Is usually a third party company. Now, if those shoes, and they can have very minor defects that you can't even tell, the naked eye can't even tell unless you're a trained person. But if it does not meet a certain quality standard, that whole container gets rejected.
Correct.
And now these shoes need to be sold in the local market. Of course, they strip the brand out. They have to be sold in the local market for pennies on the dollar because they have to recover the money they've invested in
Right.
building those shoes. So I
That's how
was
I
at the
got my
factory.
Yeezys. That's how I got
Okay.
my Yeezys, by the way. They were defective.
So
Sorry.
I was touring my factory in India, and I was like, I saw a bunch of these lying in one corner, and I talked to the guy, and he says like, "Oh, these are all are either surplus, we made more than we needed to make, or these were rejects because they did not meet the quality standard." And we discussed and negotiated the prices, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna happily buy them from you because my kids will need them more often." So that's how we partnered with them to be able to, make these shoes available. We're at the place where we're not ready to scale that, but we have the opportunity in terms of supply, but we don't necessarily have the opportunity in terms of our demand side of being able to see how we can scale them.
Lost him for a second,
So
right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay, so we have an opportunity from a supply point of view. We have enough and more, but we're yet to find enough partners who can help serve us on the demand side of
Got it.
things, to be able to help make those shoes available. So we initially went from kids to now being able to work with youths, because we know that a nice, well-dressed youth looking for a job, when he wears
Yes.
a nice, decent pair of shoe, does a whole lot more better in an interview, right? And I can know how that feels
The confidence.
internally. Yes,
The con-
huge,
Yeah.
huge.
That is great.
So
I'm curious. You live in Texas now. You've been here 5 years.
5 years,
Do you own a pair of cowboy boots?
couple of them. I tell my cowboy friends here, I have more cowboy boots than you guys have. Yes.
Wow.
So Sabrina, interesting. That
I thought
bring
you were
this
going to
up.
say no.
No, I have a couple of them. I'll tell you this. Growing up in India, my dad, for some reason, was fascinated with country music and country and cowboy movies. So I grew up listening to a lot of country music. In fact, I assumed that that's how you sing those country songs, right? So I remember the particular incident. This is in California. There's a particular Sunday. We in a church gathering, we have what we call a time of worship, where you usually have a worship leader or a music leader who goes up and leads. So there was a situation that a worship leader could not show up, and the person there asked me if I could help in. And the only way I knew how to sing some of the songs was the country style.
Oh my
And
God.
I didn't realize that that is what would be considered country, right? And I remember after having finished that song, this guy walks up to me and says, "That's the first brown cowboy I ever met," right? So yes, I've been fascinated by that. I have quite a few of cowboy boots, and I love them. I For some reason I feel at home. Now
That
that I'm
is
in
so
Texas.
great.
Yes, I
You
think the
know,
only thing I don't have is the y'all drawl.
Yeah. Oh,
I,
it'll come because even when I'm texting, I write y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
It's coming.
I tell you what, I just finished watching Yellowstone, right? The TV show.
Yeah.
Okay,
I love country music now,
okay,
especially the last 2 seasons. They play a lot of concerts and
Yes.
these
okay,
countries. So can you recommend that to your dad if he's not seen it? Kevin
okay.
Costner and the whole team has
It's a
done
great
such a
show.
good show. I mean, I put it up there with Breaking Bad and Game of
Mm.
Thrones.
Oh,
It's
wow.
that good
Yeah.
for me.
Wow.
It's an
Okay.
excellent show.
It's
Yes.
so good. I could talk
And
about it for an hour. It's so good.
wow.
It's
And
like,
Austin's a great place for country music too.
Oh
It
yeah.
is it Aaron Sorkin? Yellowstone? No, it's Kevin Costner, the producer.
Okay, I
Okay.
haven't
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
it, so
Oh, you
It's
have to see it.
it
Yes.
is
yes.
so good. You make sure you wear your cowboy boots and watch
Okay,
it.
And watch it.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know your dad's been a big inspiration for you through your life. Who else inspires you today?
Well, I think I don't know. We've had Rajesh Setty on the show, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And he
Rajesh has been a
introduced
huge inspiration. I mean, I wish
All
I'd
of
met
us.
him 20 years ago, right? So I think for me, the way Rajesh looks at life in general, not just business, is just fascinating for me, right? And I wish I could just even be 1% of who he is in terms of the way he thinks, the way he makes decisions, the choices he makes, and how he does things. I think for me is a big huge inspiration. I think uh, I wish I could speak to him more often. When we used to live in California, every Friday used to be our chai time. So I would go meet up with him, and we would just meet over chai and just chit chat and just learn so much. And yes, for me, I think Rajesh is a huge inspiration. My 3-year-old daughter for me is an inspiration because I'm seeing the world very differently from the way she sees it, from her eyes. And I think for me that's very, very fascinating because I think she's the first child that I'm getting to hang around with. Growing up we never had somebody that young, so for me to be able to see that, I think is very fascinating for me.
Yeah,
So
very
I
nice.
think they're, of course, pulls apart, but yes, I think these two would be huge.
I just spent half a day with Rajesh last week. So
Yeah, I know
I,
you did.
yeah, I'm with
Yeah,
you. I flew down just to meet him. So he's
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
inspired me as well. And it was great to finally meet him in
yeah.
person. And I would also like to talk to him more often. I sent him a message last night, and he said next week. So I said, okay,
Nice,
I've got him in
nice.
my calendar. Um, Rapid fire, Sabrina.
Yep, let's do
Rapid
it.
fire. Will you
Oh,
start?
okay,
Yeah, we're gonna just
Okay.
ask random questions, and just keep the answers short if you can, please.
okay.
Which book would you want to be a character in?
Oh, pass, because I'm not so much into fiction.
Uh,
Okay.
the fact that
Yes.
you mentioned a book, Sabrina,
Yeah.
the only, like, in the last decade, the book that's inspired me the most is actually about shoes. And it was the Nike book, Shoe Dog.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
but where Philip Knight talks about his whole journey.
yeah.
And it is for
Interesting.
anybody who is into business or entrepreneurship or wants to understand what the American dream actually means. That book is the best book. Yeah.
I have
So,
to look
and
at.
it's
Yeah.
about shoes, literally,
Wow.
right? Yeah. Did
Okay, I'm
did
going to switch the question then. But go ahead, ask.
yeah? No, just I want your thoughts on, did Nike and the shoe company create Michael Jordan, or did Michael Jordan create Nike, what Nike is today? Because I've had many
Mm.
debates with my friends about that.
Well, I like to believe that Michael Jordan did not exist when Nike existed, right? Thanks to the fact that Nike existed, Michael Jordan had the opportunity. So yes, I believe Nike was here. Michael took it here, but Michael would also not be where he is if Nike didn't step in to do its role. So that's my take on
I'm going
that.
to add something to that. I think Michael's mom was the genius behind
Uh
him making the
Sure.
money off of it.
Making that contract and that deal
Yes.
happen, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Sure.
Okay, so you don't read fiction
I'm
much.
not
So
big into fiction at
you're big
all.
into fiction.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change the question.
Okay.
What is one book you recommend to others?
Oh, one that I'm recently reading and it's just
Sure.
fascinating is Don't Make Them Think.
Don't make them think. Okay.
Yes. Now, most people look at it as a UI UX book, but for me, it's just this whole idea of understanding human behavior when it comes to
Psychology.
any interaction,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, it's
Uh,
just been fascinating.
what's your favorite movie?
Schindler's List.
Oh, I love that
That's
movie.
such a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah, you know that
Yeah.
scene when it's all black and white, and then the girl, you see the little red dress,
Yes.
and then you see her no longer breathing.
Oh,
It's just so fascinating,
That
right?
was just that
heartbreaking.
was
I know, right?
Spielberg's. I mean, he's done so much, but that was
Yeah.
Spielberg's masterpiece, no doubt.
True.
If you could instantly learn any skill, what would it be?
Um, reading people's mind.
Mm, good one.
It's good. It's a good one. What's something people don't know about you? Like, maybe only your wife knows or your 3-year-old knows. Something that might be like,
Oh.
oh, really?
So I like to cook to de-stress. Yeah, that's not a whole lot of people know about it. Well, mostly would be a lamb or a goat dish. But don't ask me how it turns out. But I said I just love cooking
You
because it's
enjoy
just a
doing
great
it
way to
though.
de-stress. I love doing that, right? But I like it the Master Chef style. That means somebody has to chop all the vegetables and keep them ready, and I just step in and do my magic, and then I leave. That's the part that I enjoy the most.
That's true.
And not the cleaning that happens after that, and
Yes.
not the chopping of vegetable that needs to happen before that.
You just like to put it all together.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Last
a huge
question.
de-stressor for me. Yeah.
Last question. If you could ask your future self, not your younger self, your future self a question, what would it be?
Good one, Sabrina.
Thank you.
First time we're asking that.
I actually saw it in one of my daughter's TV shows, yes, or heard it in one of my daughter's TV shows yesterday. I was like, this is a good one.
Inspiration comes from all sources, Sabrina.
Yes.
We'll take them.
So I think that would be, where do you see yourself 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, and what decisions could you be making differently today?
Okay. See, you're going to be that one that lives past 100 and has a healthy long life.
That's his father,
Gosh.
not him. He doesn't want
No,
that's
but
his father.
he's going to also.
Uh,
Because he's going to ask his future self and he's going to say 30 years down the line. So,
yes.
very good.
Joshua, thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you, guys.
I'm going to finish this, and today is my last day, so I'm going shopping because I know how much empty space I have in my suitcase. I'm going to go to a Nike store and I'm going to go insult them and tell them that I'm not buying any more cemented shoes in my life. And then I'm going to go to a boutique store and look for a nice pair of shoes.
Well, you can just go to Rozario.com.
I was just going to say, order his shoes.
It's much more convenient.
Sabrina, I am not spending $375 for a pair of shoes. I don't expect or hope to remarry. And, I don't want to spend that kind of budget for a pair of shoes.
It will change your life, Amit.
I'm pretty, I don't know if you use the word confident, but my wife tells me I'm overconfident and arrogant. So I don't need a pair of shoes to make me even worse.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Your passion. You had made a comment while we were talking that it's the shoe industry is like a dying industry.
Yes.
And the fact that you've taken this leap of faith because you are so passionate about it, and I see that, I feel like success is like just around you. So keep going. I can't wait to see what you do with this company.
I think what's happened in closing is that we haven't innovated enough in the industry. That was a problem, and I feel. And our goal and our mission is to innovate, because it's a very traditional, classic industry, and our goal is to see how do we bring innovation as a huge part into this. I mean, we can go on in hours and hours on how we're innovating, but the 3D configurator using technology is one bit of that innovation.
Excellent.
To be able to revive an industry that I feel is dying.
Sabrina, in my next podcast, I'm going to put behind my books, I'm going to put the pair of Air Jordans and my Gucci's and all my nice shoes. It looks good, huh? It looks very good.
I think it looks so cool. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're conversation starters very often for me. So
yeah, I bet. Why do you have shoes?
Yeah, exactly. Especially with a lot of my marketing clients, right? They're like, what do you have shoes there? I get to tell them, okay, you have 15 minutes, and I'll tell them, I'll send you my.
No, you have 15 minutes, or do you have $400? That's
Well, I can charge them on my marketing invoicing. So
that's true.
Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for your time, and this is really fun.
Thank you. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. Don't forget to go to J. Rozario, order your pair of shoes. And this has been an awesome, awesome episode of Indian Explorers. We hope you enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.